Hey, security peeps, it's Renee Small. I am back here again in the Breaking into Cybersecurity webinar series, and I have my fabulous co-host, Christophe Foulon here, and I also have our amazing guest for today, Jose Lopez.
Hello.
Hi, Jose. So what we are going to do is our usual. We are going to ask Jose all about his career, how he got here, so he can give you advice as to how to break into cybersecurity within the past 5 years, focusing on folks within the past 5 years. So Jose, please talk to us about what made you want to break into cybersecurity. Like, tell us about how you got into this field.
Right. So previously to this, I was in the Air Force, and I was a network admin there. And just from my day-to-day, I was just constantly seeing different places where we can improve on just being, I wasn't really thinking about it in terms of cybersecurity, the field that I was too heavily introduced to. I was just looking at these things like, man, it'd be more secure if we implemented this policy or, kept better track of these things going on. So as I away and it started getting closer and closer to me separating, I was like, this is the field that I want to get into.
And how do you see your background being an advantage to you transitioning in for other military individuals looking to transition into cybersecurity? Oh, did we lose him?
Jose, are you there? Jose.
I think we lost him temporarily.
I guess he is. So everyone, just so you know, Jose was actually sitting in a Starbucks, and we are going to wait for him to reconnect. If you have any questions while we are here, Chris and I are happy to answer any questions that you may have about breaking into the industry, about anything. Well, I guess not anything, but focus into cybersecurity. If you have any questions, let us know, and we'll be happy to answer as well as we can.
I think while we're waiting for Jose, maybe one of the tips to share for individuals is find interesting RSS feeds or interesting websites that you want to keep up to, and use a RSS feed viewer or a thing like Feedly or something like that to help bring all your sources back together. And what that does is it helps you have a single pane of view to all the different websites, and you can find interesting stories and dive back in. Oh, there we go.
He's back.
Hi, Jose.
Yep. Hi.
Perfect.
So the question was, how do you see your military background being beneficial to your transition into information security for those military individuals also looking to transition?
It's definitely helped me see things in a very different perspective. I find that as I'm going about my day-to-day, I find a lot of different areas to improve upon or change a little bit for more security. So I think definitely the mindset you get when you leave the military is always like this kind of like heavy improvement and really always heavy on security and just trying to make everything better for the mission or whatever it is.
Perfect. So people want to know about you, about your background. So you're a network engineer in the Air Force, right?
Yeah.
Before transitioning to where you are, well, right before where you are now, because you just got a new role.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us about like what your role out, stepping into from coming out in the military into that first role and then into the position you have now.
Right. So when I was in the military, I did a couple different things. So when I started off, it was more of the engineering capacity. I was building networks from the ground up, and then after that, it was more of an admin capacity, and then more into like crypto type things. Now I'm a security engineer now, and I think what I did before really relates a lot, because on the network side, you know, you're always working with these different protocols and actually setting it up on the routers and switches themselves. So just having that knowledge was very helpful. But then also just being able to have that troubleshooting experience was probably the most critical thing that I have now. Being able to look at a system and be like, okay, this is wrong. Well, how does it work to begin with? And then being able to go in through that way. So that's been very, very useful, especially in what I'm doing now. I mean, mostly I'm maintaining SIM systems, so just making sure that they're up. So it's transferred pretty well.
Just for those on the podcast, SIM systems are where logs get ingested so that the security analysts and engineers can look at. I guess my question would be, so outside of the on-the-job training that you had in the military for setting up those systems, were there any educational or certifications that you did to help prepare you?
So because I was in the military, it was actually mandatory to get the Security Plus certification. So I had that coming up. That's the only certification that I currently have. I'm currently working on my CISSP right now. But yeah, I mean, I already have one certification.
Okay.
That's great. So it's mandatory for you to get, excuse me, certified.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about your education too, because you did go to school as well, right? While you were in the military.
I took a few classes, but I don't have my degree at all. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
What sources of training did you find were beneficial to help get you where you are, that you found that you wanted to share with others?
Yeah, so after I left the military, actually was able to get out of my contract a month early to attend this cybersecurity boot camp, which was 5 months long. It's this program called SecureSet. And it was through there that I got a lot of the more foundational knowledge. And, you know, it's funny because you always say, you know, you don't know what you don't know. And that's when I really found out what I didn't know, is when I went through there, and appreciation for all the different paths I could take and the places I want to go to, and really helped me figure out what it was that I wanted to do. And as I go forward, the short term and the long term. So definitely doing that cybersecurity bootcamp was a pretty big help to me.
That's awesome. So SecureSet is I know a boot camp. Chris Roberts, I believe, talks about it or has talked. I don't know if you've heard one of his talks there, where I know he's connected to them somehow. But tell us more about, I know people probably want to know more about that, especially since you were able to get out of, you were able to leave early to be able to go through that boot camp program. Like, how long was it? And
yeah, so it was actually a program through the Army. So if there's any people in the military right now still listening, I'd go to your training advisor, whoever that may be, and ask them about the different programs that are out there. But yeah, SecureSet is like a 5-month program, and you really just go really in depth into all these different areas. And you really get a wide spectrum. I mean, they set up, web servers for you to go and exploit and teach you how to actually do those exploits, which is really awesome. I had never done anything like that before, and it actually helped me shortly after when I got out. And I was working actually for this smaller company, and I was able to get all these accounts from this website and write a report and let them know exactly how they could fix it. And they were very appreciative of that, which was awesome. But yeah, they go into different things also, like the networking side, the sysadmin side. You'll learn a lot about Linux. You'll download all these virtual machines, things like that. So it's just a really great program.
And so from that program, did you find that there's a particular niche in security that you wanted to go down, or you're still investigating different areas?
As far as like a very specific place, I don't know if I would say I'd picked a very specific place. I'd say like a pretty interesting niche market right now has to do with blockchain technology. So that might be something interesting to try to look into a little bit more in the future. But definitely I'm kind of leaning towards maybe getting more experience just on the foundational side and maybe going into more of a pen testing role. But I mean, time will see where that goes.
Wow. Yeah, blockchain is so hot right now.
Oh, yeah.
When I talk to leaders of companies and anyone that has any kind of experience in blockchain, or has just touched it personally. You know, some leaders have even said, even if they just have familiarity,
Oh yeah.
you know, so it's
Yeah.
definitely a skill that's really good. Now, is this only for the military? Is secure
No,
sets?
no, no.
Okay.
This is for civilians as well, as anyone can take it. They're actually at various locations. There's 2 in Colorado, actually, one in Denver, one in Colorado Springs. I believe there's one in, I don't remember if it was Dallas or Austin, Texas, and then there's another one in Florida, and I believe they're opening another one in DC somewhere.
Yes, they just recently mentioned moving to DC.
Yeah. Yeah, they're growing.
So now that you've completed Secure Set, you're in your new role in security. Have you found any areas where you keep up to date with technology and the ever-changing pace that you wanted to share with others?
You know, honestly, so while I was going through Secure Set, we were always encouraged to go to different websites, and I go to Ars Technica a lot. But I found that as I've grown my connections on LinkedIn, that's actually become the #1 place I go to now. I mean, just with all the people I follow and all the updates they post, that just lead me down through this rabbit hole of all these different areas and technologies. I mean, that's just my #1 place now, really.
It's funny because I think Chris Roberts said that recently as well. Like, he used to be, Twitter was a big place, folks, a lot. And people still are also a lot of the times on Twitter, but it seems as though LinkedIn is becoming that spot because everyone is jumping in and you can connect with people. And like you said, very quickly get down that rabbit hole of what's happening in the industry. So, and I know
Definitely.
Chris has a not a podcast list. What do you have again, Chris? Well, you have the podcast list, which is awesome. But then what else do you have?
I have several other resources available on my LinkedIn page, which we'll share shortly. But I have a collection of RSS feeds that you can go to, list of podcasts, lists of books, as well as different educational platforms like cybrary.it, which I know Renee is a big supporter of, that you can find mostly free or free educational training to keep advancing your skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay.
Absolutely. So tell us about like your job process. So when you left and you were getting this new opportunity, tell us step by step. Like, one of the things that we hear all the time, Chris gets questions, I get questions. How do we break in? Like, how do we get our first real cybersecurity job in the industry? So walk us through how that happened for you.
So you asked how I got my current job, how that process was for.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was actually found on LinkedIn. And then she just asked if I wanted to speak. She had this opportunity. I said I was interested, so she called me, and I was actually, very impressed when we spoke on the phone. It was very different from the other first interviews I've had with HR people. She was extremely knowledgeable in the field, which made me very interested in this company. And then I found out that they actually train everyone that comes in, and they really look for people with the right character fit. So the process took about 6 interviews. Actually, it was quite a number of interviews. It was technical, but also very they were really trying to gauge who you are as a person. And they also sent me a person. It wasn't a personality assessment, but it was something close to that. And it was really exciting when I found out that I got the position. And then once that happened, I was flown out to Tampa, Florida, to train for a month, and then I was brought back to Vegas to actually start my job.
Would you say that you were actively looking, or you were just a passive candidate and they reached out to you?
Oh man, so about this, I had already interviewed for so many positions and gotten rejected so many times, and I was actually really beat down by this point. I was very actively seeking out a different job, and at this point, when I was sought out, I had started working for actually my friend's company, and I was doing some finance things. I wasn't really, and I was still kind of looking, but it wasn't as heavy as before. So maybe a little bit in the middle.
Tell us about that process, because Renee asked earlier, and I don't think you fully answered. How many places do you apply at? How many interviews did you go on before you found this right one?
Oh, I don't even think I have a number for that. It was so many. It was, at first it was like this, starting this new thing, applying to all these different jobs, and it must have been hundreds that I applied to, but I had very little experience in actual cybersecurity. I had plenty of interviews, but for some reason the interviews I kept being given were things that were just like way above my lead. Had this one interview about red teaming, so I went in and then it's like, okay, here's a box, break into it, and I'm like, well, I'm not quite there yet, so it was very disparaging at first, but it was, through all that rejection, I think it really, really helped, really put me in a more stable mindset to keep going. But yeah, it must have been hundreds of different places until I was actually taken. Through that, I did receive a couple of different offers. I received one through AWS, but it was for networking, which really wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. And I did receive actually another position as another offer as an analyst, but which I had originally accepted. But after talking to this current company, I realized, I don't know, I felt like really like I'd be a great fit here. I mean, the pay was very different, but I think some things are more important than money, and this job really seemed like they really cared about their employers. I mean, their employees, like no one else that I had talked to. I mean, the training that they gave me was, ridiculous. Not a lot of companies take you to somewhere else to train for a month just to make sure that you're ready, and all the benefits they offer. I was like, this is definitely where I want to go to.
I mean, that sounds like an amazing company. And you're right.
Yeah.
That really is passionate about security, and it's not just checking a box. It's really truly making sure that their analysts fully understand, getting you ready to fit in that role.
Definitely,
right?
yeah.
And that's one of the things.
Oh, definitely.
That's one of the things that we hear all the time with all the various surveys about what professionals, millennials, cybersecurity professionals, most people want. It's like the continuous learning and the training, and to feel confident in their roles, and to feel like you're ahead of, you're always looking forward, and it's like, this company is amazing because sounds like they're very forward looking, where sometimes what tends to happen is companies look back, like they look at your prior experience instead of thinking about how you can use that to be forward looking, so it sounds like an amazing opportunity for you.
Oh yeah, and it's I knew that they were very different when during the training process, during the first week, they had us read this motivational book. Like that was part of the training process, and talking on it and things like that. So I mean, I would definitely say if there's anyone like actively looking for a position somewhere and they're getting rejected, just keep going forward, because I was rejected hundreds of times, but I'm so glad I was, because there's no way that these places would have competed with this company and their mindset. I'm so glad that I found this position.
That's definitely important. Let me ask you a question. So you go into some of these interviews and they may have been above your head or not what you were looking for. What are some of the ways that you responded to those types of interviews that individuals looking to transition in can learn from your challenges?
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of the biggest thing, if you're in an interview where it's just a little bit above what I would just encourage you not to lie, not to try to make yourself seem like you know more, because they'll always be able to spot it. But be able to talk on it. If you're not able to answer a question fully, break the question apart in your head. Find that basic part that you do know and talk about that. I mean, that's something I did very constantly. If I knew I wasn't able to answer the question in all its depth, I just took it apart and said, I can't answer that question fully, but I do know this much about it, and I can talk about this much, and I'm confident in talking about this much. And of course, always do your research, know what the company does. Something I did a lot was I looked at what other positions they were hiring for, looked at the requirements for those positions, and then I went and studied those requirements so that I'd have some understanding. But I feel like if you're confident enough, and if you're studying enough, and if you're keeping up to date, and if you're truly passionate, you'll be able to move forward. You just have to make sure that they realize that you're passionate, because there's so many skills that a company can teach you, but it's that mindset of moving forward that's very difficult to build in a person.
You're hitting the nail on the head, Jose. Excuse me. So very true. Like all those points. What is the book that they gave you to read? The motivational book.
It's called The One Thing.
Okay, got to make sure that
Yeah.
I downloaded on my Audible, hopefully.
Yeah, actually, I've heard of that book, and I think it actually might be on my list of books to check out. Yeah,
Awesome.
I've read about it before, but yeah, mental health and wellness is definitely becoming a predominant issue within this industry, especially because it's so stressful. You're worrying about the security breaches, doing everything securely, getting it in on time. So much so that at the recent DerbyCon conference, they had an entire trip for almost village-size exhibit solely focused on mental health and wellness. So that's amazing that this company is incorporating that from the get-go to show that they care about the true and full you, and not just getting out what you can provide.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Being in the industry, like you both said, definitely super stressful. And I think that's one of the areas that people don't fully understand. When they get in, or before they're getting in, they're trying to the level of stress that security analysts, at all levels are dealing with. It's really high.
Right.
And I don't think people are fully aware of that when they're breaking into the industry.
Definitely, and I would never try to sugarcoat it. If someone asked me, I work a lot of hours, but I also have a pretty decent amount of downtime as well. But when I am working, I work a lot of hours. I have a schedule, but just because work ends at 6 doesn't mean I leave at 6. You have to get done whatever it is you have to get done. But I feel like if you really look at it as, okay, not in terms of the time you're spending, but in terms of the knowledge you're gaining, it's definitely worth it. Every day I'm going to work. If I stay late, it doesn't matter, because maybe I learned something new, new way, and maybe some new Linux command that just made my job a whole lot easier. Or maybe I'm staying late because I'm thinking of a way to automate things. The company I work for has a lab internally where if you want to stay, you can stay and play with the lab and try to figure out if you can make things faster, easier for everyone. So, you always got to go in trying to get something out of it.
And that continuous education and continuous learning is very important. Have you ever been to any conferences or meetups or B-sides or anything like that to meet up with the larger community and start to network with them?
I think the only conference I've been to so far is Snowfrock. I went to that in Denver, but now that I'm in Vegas, I'm really hoping to go to DevCon. So, I'm really looking forward to that.
Nice.
Or is it Black Hat? That's over here. Yeah.
Both of them are there. I'd also look into the B-sides. It's a smaller, more niche type conference, so you have more involvement. They call all their attendees participants, because you actually have to participate in the conference. So check those out as well for your continuous learning.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, I know in Denver. You're in Vegas now, but I believe there's BurrCon and GurCon. I don't know what the difference is in the two. Do you know, Chris?
I think GurCon was more in the Midwest.
Okay. And Burr is like, okay, cool. I wonder, why are they naming it this way?
As we come to the top of the hour, is there any advice that you wanted to share for those following in your footsteps?
I think the biggest advice, this is something that I asked a lot when I was first entering, and I was always trying to seek out advice. And I realized, when I really finally was able to get forward and get a job, that a lot of times I was looking for the wrong type of advice. I'd really encourage everyone, and I think this is the most important thing, is just to not give up. I'm always looking for things like, how can, of course, ask all the advice you can, but as far as how to specifically do things, try to like gear yourself towards more just not giving up. I mean, it is hard out there. There's a lot of jobs out there, but a lot of people want a lot of requirements. They're asking for a lot of different things from you. So just keep applying, apply yourself to everything you do, and just keep going, and just don't let the rejections bother you. Because I mean, I know they definitely bothered me for a short while, and I definitely slowed down my applying process, and it was just a huge mistake to have done that. So just definitely take your rejections as well as with all the good things, and just keep pushing forward.
That's such good advice. I think Whitney, I'm trying to think about all the other folks that have been on here.
Charles.
Charles. Yeah, everyone says the same thing, that they kept applying, they kept going, and keeping your spirits up and realizing that just like they're you're applying to hundreds, they're getting hundreds of applicants. It's really just going through that process and looking at it. I tell people when they get down and out, almost like look at it like a game. Like how interviews can I go on? Because like you said, if you didn't go through all those hundreds, if you didn't apply to all those hundreds of jobs, get rejected for those interviews, you wouldn't be at this amazing, phenomenal company that you're at today. And so,
exactly,
when you look at it on the other side, when you're on, it's hard to be in the middle of going through it and going through that struggle. But when you're on the other side of it, you look back and you go, wow, there are reasons why all of these things didn't come together. And I'm so happy that I ended up here. And so your piece of advice to say, like, don't give up and keep going. All of you consistently have talked about going through, hundreds of applications. And was it Whitney that said she did 30-something interviews?
Yeah.
It was, right?
Wow.
So like every week we get on the phone with you all and you talk, or this webinar, and you talk about how many interviews. And she said one of the things that I thought was so cool, she said at the end, I was, on that last interview, I was cool as a cucumber because you practice 30 times. You're not anymore, so and I know you could probably give that same advice. Like you've gone on so many interviews that you can ask them the questions. Like get to that point where you're comfortable and people you realize, and it's really all about the fit. It's all about, do you have the skills, do you all this stuff, and then it's like cultural fit. So excellent advice. Thank you for that. Chris, I know
you touched on a good point that I really wanted to bring up again. There is that cultural fit. As much as you're interviewing these companies, you should be interviewing them back because you want to make sure that it's going to be a good work environment for you. You're going to be happy. They have the growth opportunities, whether educational or career-wise, that you're looking for, and don't just settle for something just because you got an offer. And you clearly show that you got offers before, but you didn't just settle.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely very important. I know because that can be really easy when you've gotten rejected so many times and you finally get an offer to just accept it. But I mean, this is probably will be at least some type of long-term thing. You really don't want to just pick any job. You want to be somewhere where you go to work at. I mean, if I get too burnt out during my work day, I can just go into the break room. There's like a Nintendo 64 there, an Xbox, like find a place that just caters to the things you care about and things that really can help you just and have that kind of work-life balance. I know some people don't really believe in the work-life balance, but I think there's a point where you're like, okay, it's not a big deal to come to work and wake up every morning. It's something you really enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. Good, excellent words of advice. So we are coming up on 1 minute to 12:30. So I want to thank you both. Thank you, Chris, for being my co-host. Thank you, Jose, for giving us all of these words of wisdom today.
Thank you, guys.
This one was awesome. People want to know again, what's the name of the book?
It's called The One Thing.
The One Thing. Do you know who?
Yeah, I can actually.
Do you know who?
One of our commenters mentioned Amazon Prime right now, so.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
If you have Amazon Prime.
Nice.
One other thing, folks, I am excited. I think I'm going to do another challenge. I did a challenge recently.
Okay.
And I feel like for the next couple of days until we end Cybersecurity Awareness Month, I'm going to jump with a new challenge and try to do some webinars and teach some courses and provide some information on resumes and LinkedIn profiles, because I'm seeing the struggles that people are having. And what's amazing is I've been working with a handful of folks on their resumes, and like in one guy in particular, he updated his resume and like that morning applied into the interview. So I was like, was it because of the resume that we did? And he's like, yes. I'm like, oh my God, you have to come on and talk about it. So I definitely to get people, to give people more advice and as much help as they possibly can get when it comes to the LinkedIn profiles, because as you both know, LinkedIn is really, people go to your LinkedIn profile before they even see your resume. So, so definitely things to look out for. So folks, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll be sending that out, sending some information out about all these free webinars, this little series that I'm going to do, a new challenge. And I look forward to seeing everyone next week. Next week we have, who do we have next week? We have Spencer Brown, finally. So many times. I cannot wait to connect with Spencer. So I look forward to connecting with him next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you all. Bye.